Hola a todos! I'm Alex, and today I want to show you how you can kind of misuse Totolisto a little bit as a note-taking program. So the idea came from by a friend actually asking me, you know what, I'm looking for a very simple note-taking tool that I can share between devices. So I have my notes on different devices. And couldn't I use Totolisto for that? And my first reaction was like, no. Totolisto is a task management app. It's not made for note-taking. I mean, it does have notes, but that's not actually what it's made for. But then I thought about it and I was like, actually, why not? And the thing is that after a while, I have started to actually put my notes into Totolisto as a pure notes. I have another note-taking program, but that is not shared between devices, and that sometimes annoys me. And I thought, yeah, actually that's a good idea, so why not just use Totolisto? So I'm showing you how I'm doing this now and how I use Totolisto for pure notes now. So here's my Totolisto, and well, you can put notes on tasks, but also on these properties here, on category sections and so on. You have this option to put notes there. And so what I did here is I usually have a category shopping. I don't use that for my weekly shopping, but things that I know I order every half year or so. So I have a list I don't know, order Mexican food, and then I have a list what kind of things I want to order, and I collect those things and do that every few months. So I already have that category usually. And so I just added myself another category here for books, because I usually have a to-read list. I collect if somebody recommends a book, so I put that on my to-read list. And so I have a long list of books that I like to read. And so I put them in. I haven't done that here for this example, but you can imagine just having books listed here. And another thing where I like to use that nowadays is for infrastructure things. I do that on my private computer, but also on my work computer. Often doing the same things, and I want to look things up. So for example, for infrastructure, I might have something about Linux. I'm using Linux, and maybe I need some notes about the updates I'm doing every week. I wouldn't need that right now, but just as an example, I could tell myself, okay, I have to do sudo apt update, and then I have to say just those commands that I need to do in order to do my updates. So this is not exactly what I have on my list, but a few things like that. Things that I sometimes, little commands that I use rarely, but I sometimes need them. And I always had trouble finding them in my notes on each computer because I had to duplicate them. And here I know I have them in a central place. This is of course a kind of misuse of Totolisto, as I said, because I mean, infrastructure is actually a category that I do have, but books would not be a category that I would usually use. So what I did on top was to create myself an info to make sure I know that this category is not a real category, so I don't try to delete it accidentally. I mean, actually, by the way, if you delete such a category, the notes would not directly disappear, because you would get warned, because those notes are automatically protected if you put them in categories. So I could just add myself an info and say only for note taking. Have a little book as a symbol, and then I can save this. And that's actually not, I would not have it as a task type, it's just some kind of info. And then I could say here for the books, I just attach this new info, and then I know that's all right. I just created this category for me to take notes. I can also, if it's here, if it's a subcategory, I can also just hide it below the main category, so it doesn't disturb me, because the main thing is still that I want to organize my tasks with this, and I don't want to put too much rubbish in there just for the notes. But for a few notes, yeah, it makes sense to me. So yeah, for me, it's important not to overdo it. I wouldn't want all my categories just for notes, because then it makes more sense to really use a note-taking program. And actually with any types of notes, I find it hard to retrieve them. Because sometimes I'm not even sure if I've written it down, and if I do, I'm not exactly sure, is it in my note-taking place or is it maybe in an extra file somewhere? So that's a bit hard to decide in any kind of schema. I haven't found any way to always be sure to retrieve my notes. But with Totalisto, it's kind of easier for me because I use that anyway. And so for me, that's the first place nowadays to look. So first of all, if I'm looking for these little things, maybe it's in Totalisto. If it's not, then I'm looking into my note-taking program, and if it's not there, then I try to see if I have it in some kind of file, or maybe I just haven't written it down. That happens too. So for me, the advantage of using Totalisto for note-taking is that I'm already using it anyway, so it's not an extra thing on top. Of course, if you're in a kind of ecosystem where a note-taking program is provided anyway, then you will probably use that. But I'm not using I'm not using any of these bigger ecosystems, so I would have to find a note-taking program that suits me. I would have to register, maybe pay for it. So for me, it's easier to just put it into Totalisto. And also those note-taking programs are often more complicated because, well, their purpose is just taking notes, so they will offer you more features of how to organize your notes and do all these things. And that is great if you need that. It's just that I find I'm trying to cut down on notes a little bit because, as I said, I often don't find them again. It's often like 2 years later, it's, oh yeah, I wrote that down. Interesting. But I haven't really looked at those things. So I try to write down really those things that I really need. Also clean up my notes often. And if I'm doing it in Totalisto, I know that I have to restrict myself because it's not that much space and it's not that much organization around it. So for me, it actually even helps to reduce this note craze. Can be different for anyone, but if you are also in this situation, say, it's just a few simple notes, something that I need often just to look them up, then it might be an option for you to also put this into Totalisto. So yeah, in general, I'm not actually a fan of misusing tools like that, but sometimes it makes sense to stretch them a little bit if we already have them. So try what works for you, and I see you next time. Hasta luego.